to be here. I don't know, how am I going to call all these people up here to be a part of the panel? It's getting hot up here. I got to sit down. I'll call them up here. Whoever's available for the piano, Ron Meyer, Alan McGargle, Russell Acord, Cliff Barakman, David Pilates, Bob Gimlin, some idiot named Clyde Lewis. Oh, I'm already here. Okay, Ken Gerhard. We can all get up here, and Craig, you can also get up here too. We can all sit around and chat the Bigfoot chat. So I'm going to take a seat, and then when everybody comes over, I guess we'll start. Stand by. There's that guy. Hey, Russell. You coming up?
Hey, there's not enough chairs, so we're just going to go sit back down.
Oh, you really? You got to have a panel with Russell on it, otherwise it's going to suck. All right. How you doing, buddy? Good to see you too.
I don't know.
We gotta find room. There's always room for Russell. He's like Jello. We gotta have Jello. Oh, and Bob, come on, royalty. No, you're not like Jello. You are the hard candy.
Okay, thank you.
You want to stand too? You can do that. Ready?
All right, working.
All right, so I don't know how we're going to handle this. I mean, I'm so glad and honored to have everybody here up on stage with us. Give them all a round of applause. What I usually do when I do these panels is I let them speak because, I mean, I do it all the time, and I think that it's important that they give their accounts and what they're researching and what they're doing. Of course, sitting to my left is Bob Gimlin, and Gimlin Patterson film. The reason why we're all here, the reason why, we saw that video when we were kids and we're like thinking, did they fake it? Don't overdo it. No, that's okay. No. I've known Bill for a while. He's teasing me. So, Bob, I would like to
say anything you want to say.
Call him everything except wait for dinner. So Bob, I want you to start things off. I think you should start this off. And for those, there are a lot of younger people that are here, and a lot of other people that I'm sure want to know more about history. And you're looking at history right here with the Patterson Gimlin film. Bob, why don't you kick us off and tell us a little bit about the background and the film and what's going on with it.
Thank you very much. Hey folks, it's mighty good to see all you shining faces out there, and you beautiful women, and you big old handsome guys. Guys, man, it's good to see you out there. I didn't. You guys just come in because it's hot outside, is that right? There's got to be a reason why you're all here, so nice. Really? Yeah! Oh, thank you, sweetie. Anyway, I'll shut up here in just a second and let the man here that knows what's going on take care of this. It's a pleasure to be here and look at all you shining faces and know that you're all interested in the same subject that I am interested in, and very much interested in. And so, to see all of you folks here, it really makes the old heart pump. So, have fun, enjoy yourself, and when you fall asleep, I'll go by and wake you up a little bit, I've got a long stick with a feather on the end of it, and I'll come along and tickle your nose until you wake up. So I'm going to give the phone back to the guy that knows what's going on around here, and just sit down and shut up, okay?
Thank you so much. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to go down. I'm going to hand Craig the microphone. We're going to go down all the way to the end, come all the way back up, and then have everybody introduce each other to you. And then we're going to start, doing some really good questions, having some statements, find out what kind of work is going on, interpretations of what the creature is, what Bigfoot is, what their impressions are of the creature. So why don't we do that, Craig? Just hand it down.
Sounds good. Yeah, my name is Craig Yani. I'm with the Pacific Northwest Sasquatch Research Group. I'm an active researcher, investigative researcher, and I'm up in the North Cascades, and I got an area, and I'll be showing a little tiny trailer on that after a while. Here we go.
I thought we were going to start with Ken. I'm sorry. Rose Acorn, been a researcher for quite a while. I've been interested in the same reason most everybody here is, because of the Patterson Gimlin film. It got me set up. I'm a healthy skeptic. I need really good evidence before I'm going to put both feet into it. And I do that by just getting out there, boots on the ground, and doing my research. I've been lucky enough to be on a show called Expedition Bigfoot. Got 2 seasons out. 3rd season we're actually working on currently. I get to work with some of the really latest and greatest cutting edge technology and some extremely brilliant people. And I'll tell you, a while back, Cliff Barrickman told me what I was getting ready to get into, and I didn't listen. And you know what? The man is right. It's not easy. It takes a lot of work, a lot of dedication, and you have to be dedicated to what you're doing and buy into really your own personal beliefs. And we'll get into that eventually, but you know.
Dave Politis, and thank you. So, I'm not sure why I'm at a Bigfoot conference, but we're going to talk about missing people. And I'll throw a little Bigfoot in at the end, but as in my research, I've never said that there's a correlation. Now, how many people here have watched Missing 411 The Hunted? Wow. I'm humbled. I was told before I came here today from the distributors that on Amazon, there have been 300 million minutes watched of that film. And it was number 3 in the world of documentaries last year. So, thank you, each of you, for watching it. And if you haven't watched it, the first one I ever did was called Missing 411. Both about missing people, both under unexplained circumstances. I've written 10 books about missing people on top of that all fit the same sort of profile points. Now, before I ever got into this, I did do some Bigfoot research, wrote 3 books about Bigfoot, Looper Project, Tribal Bigfoot, and Bigfoot Wildman, and I can tell you that it's a very confusing topic with a lot of angry people. And unfortunately, I don't think any of those angry people are on stage today for your benefit, which is a good thing. And I'm sitting next to some really, really nice people that I would do conferences with. But unfortunately, the Bigfoot topic has gotten a lot of negativity in the past because of things that are said sometimes. And you're not going to hear that out of me, and I don't think you're going to hear that out of the people around me. And for that, I'm blessed. I'm very, very fortunate that all of you are here. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to speaking tomorrow. Thank you.
I'm Cliff Barrickman. I've been a Bigfoot nerd for an awfully long time. And I'm currently the co-owner with my wife and the curator of the North American Bigfoot Center, the Bigfoot Museum down in Boring, Oregon, outside of Portland. Thank you, I appreciate the kind words. I was on some TV show for a while, but I'm not, now I'm just spending my life Bigfooting, essentially, following the leads that are brought to me. The museum exists as a center, not a museum necessarily. It's a museum. It's more than that, though. But that's what my presentation is about. I think you'll dig it. It basically exists to make sure I can get my Bigfoot fix in. I'm completely addicted. I'm a lifer. But anyway, I'm very pleased to be here at Squatch Fest. It's one of my favorite gigs to do. It's local. You guys are all in my backyard, too. You know, I'm in your backyard. So thank you very much for coming out. And come by and say hi.
Good evening. My name is Ken Gerhard, and it's an honor to be here at my first Squatch Fest. Thank you. I'm a cryptozoologist, which means that I go out and search for evidence of unknown animals, and that is my opinion of Bigfoot or Sasquatch. It is an undiscovered species. I'm what is known as an aper, and I'm also an ape. So, there are a lot of different points of view in the Bigfoot field. I also refer to myself as a professional speculator, not an expert. There are no experts, but we all speculate with the best information that we've gathered through the years, and all of us come from different diverse backgrounds and so on and so forth. So, come talk to me later if you have any questions about other cryptids. I also investigate the Loch Ness Monster, Thunderbirds, Black Panthers, and the whole menagerie of mysterious beasts.
I'm Ron Meyer. I'm from Colorado. I'm a filmmaker, not a Bigfoot researcher, but I was hired to do a series called Chasing Bigfoot to expose and tell about the phenomenon of Bigfoot. And that led me to, somebody said, well, we don't think it's a hairy beast or a primate, it's some sort of interdimensional or alien creature. And I found that fascinating. So I said, let's explore that. And I decided to make a movie called Bigfoot Alien Connection Revealed. Have any of you seen that? Yeah. It's done over like 3 million views across streaming platforms. And so from there I decided, well, there seem to be these things called paranormal hot spots where Bigfoot is one kind of paranormal phenomenon that shows up, but there are other ones. And they're happening with greater frequency to more and more people. And so I thought, well, let's see if I can do a series or a movie about that itself. And then I went down the rabbit hole and said, I have this land in Colorado, and I decided, rather than just be documenting something, let me see if I can open a portal. And what we're presenting tomorrow is what happened when we opened the portal. So come on and find out the creatures that came through. We documented them on trail cam footage, and they're pretty darn weird.
My name's Alan Darnell. I've been doing Bigfoot research for a little over 10 years now. I got into it sort of by accident. It found me, I guess. And I've produced and directed several documentary films, and I go around the country, documenting different cases and looking into different weird events. And I've had a lot of experiences myself while doing that, and sort of on my own little journey here to try to figure out what I think it is and what's really going on out there. I've been working with Ron for a few years now, and we're really excited to talk to you tomorrow about some of the things that we've been trying to do. So this is sort of a tip of the iceberg. I run a Bigfoot campout weekend in Colorado, a Bigfoot adventure weekends, where we sort of take people out to have their own Bigfoot experience. It's something that I'm really passionate about. I've been doing it for just about 10 years. It's more about the people that come rather than who you get to go Bigfooting with, but you get to actually have your own experiences, hopefully, or at least talk to other people. So that's sort of where I am. I like to share what I learn about Bigfoot with everyone. So thank you for coming.
So we've got a diverse crowd of people here and experts here that are talking about Bigfoot in various ways. I wanted to kind of kick things off discussing something. I mean, being a talk show host and doing the radio show that I do, I've been interviewing a lot of people over time about Bigfoot. It's one of those topics that's very touchy with a lot of people because you got a lot of skeptics that troll now on social media about Bigfoot. You try to produce any kind of evidence, you get trolls. I just recently had some footage that I had shown to my audience that a group of guys were out in Maine and they came across a Bigfoot. There are plenty of there's a Michigan video that's out right now that's kind of getting people's attention on the internet and everything. I get the feeling though sometimes that at the moment, Bigfoot has this get off of my lawn attitude. That he is, that he's getting pushed out of his habitat and that he's getting a little bit more aggressive. Not just the fact that he's aggressive to us, but he makes himself known and he says, hey, I'm going to throw a rock at you, or I'm going to do something to get your attention. I think we need to really stop and pay attention to this. But what I want to do is, I want to ask the question, first of all, to some of the experts on this side of me about that idea, first of all. And I want to get into what Alan and Ron have been talking about, because that's a topic that I steer away from, but I'm willing to learn and hear more about it. So I want to go down and we can start with Ken and then work our way over about the attitude that, you know, Bigfoot seems to be having this change of attitude from what I'm getting, that he's being a little bit more aggressive, showing himself a lot more, and maybe even taking campers to task. Let's talk about that for a moment.
So the microphone's down to the right are working too.
Yeah, so we're talking about potential changes in alleged Bigfoot behaviors. Is that, well, if I could point out the obvious, I'm honored to work with the San Antonio Zoo as a volunteer educator, and the obvious thing the thing that's obvious to me every day working with people at the zoo is, you know, conservation and habitat loss, and we're obviously losing habitat around the planet at an alarming rate, especially here in North America, well, pretty much everywhere. So, you know, looking at Bigfoot as a biological entity, an animal, obviously all animals are impacted by, you know, humans and what we do to their environment. It makes sense that if we are basically building into some of their wilderness area, and by the way, folks, there is still a lot of wilderness area on the planet. Based on recent surveys, they estimate maybe anywhere from 26 to 46% of the world's land surface is technically wilderness, meaning that it's not really touched much by the impact of man. But that's what I think, Clyde. I think that, you know, if Bigfoot, as far as claims of aggression, and it's interesting because I've noticed there are two pretty polarized opinions in the Bigfoot field. Even during that little town square that we had a few minutes ago, you know, to some people, Bigfoot was this monstrous, terrifying thing that was going to snatch them and eat them and drag them away. And to others, it's a friendly forest giant that's going to come up and put its arm around you. So I find that aspect of it fascinating. But if nothing else, that underscores how many different opinions there are as far as what Bigfoot is. But, you know, from my perspective, I'm just going to look at the evidence. And there is evidence. There's a lot of evidence that's been accumulated over decades. And so that's kind of what I'm going to base my judgments on. But I think Bigfoot's as afraid of us as we are of it. That's my opinion.
You can. Go ahead, Clive.
I think one of the major mistakes that humans make is that we judge an animal as a species being all the same. And that might be possible for white mice or something like that, or, you know, rodents and things like that, there's a ton of them. But when you come to higher primates, and we're included in that, we are apes, we are higher primates, that is our family, because I'm talking about biology, not religion. And we are individuals, and so are they. That is also true of all the other extant apes, and I think it's probably presumably true of all the extinct ones as well. Just like it's true of dogs. Dogs have personalities. If you have dogs at your house, everyone has a certain personality. Every dog you may have had in your life has a different personality. I think Sasquatches are also just like that. They have personalities based on their own experiences. Any Sasquatch who might have been a juvenile, got shot at one point, probably has an aversion to humans carrying those weird sticks that make big noises, right? Guns. Yeah, we are all products of our experience, and certainly every other animal, their intelligence would be as well. So as far as their aggression or their get off my lawnness and stuff, I don't see any huge change. I think that they're much like all the other normal animals in the woods, and just like humans in the woods too. You come tromping into my campsite, I'm going to give you the stink eye. They don't get the stink eye, they growl and do aggressive things. But are they aggressive? Yeah, sure. Are they dangerous? Potentially. Are they out to get us? No. Yeah, I think some people get got. Sure, you should give grizzly bears a wide berth as well. But as evidence that they are not truly out to get us and destroy us, look around. If they were out to get us, there'd be very few of us left.
So I'm going to give you kind of a word to the wise. But there's a lot of Bigfoot shows out there, podcasts and things, and they interview these people and they tell these fantastic stories, and they don't say where it happened, when it happened, who they are, or how you can vet the story. Folks, be a critical thinker. In every book I've ever written, I give you a photo of the victim, I give you a picture, I give you a biography, I tell you who they are. And these people say, oh yeah, you know, we can't tell their name because of something could happen. It's baloney. If they want to be truthful and they want to be transparent, then give them the names. I've heard many podcasts over the day, and they want to hide the person's identity, and they want to tell you this great story. Well, let me tell you. that in the YouTube world, the more fantastic the story, the more people click through and watch. The more watchers, the more money the podcast or whatever gets. So, be a critical thinker. Don't believe everything you're hearing out there. It's not true. And if it was true, then you know what? I'd be on it, and I'd be having people out there. I will personally go in the field and investigate. How many of those have I investigated? None. Be critical about this. Don't believe everything you hear. That's all I have to say.
Think about human behavior. If someone comes into your house uninvited, you're going to question them. Either tell them to leave or usher them to the door. One of the two. As a society, we keep pushing deeper and deeper into the forest. We like what we see. We cut the trees down. We roll out a slab of asphalt, and we start building houses. And we are pushing further and further into this territory that is getting smaller and smaller. I don't feel threatened that if I go in the forest that something doesn't want me there, it's going to destroy me. But I know that as those spaces get smaller, any species is going to feel that tightness and want you kind of out of their space. How they go about trying to remove you, whether it is maybe a growl or a stick throw or a warning of some sort. Maybe that's how they're going about it. Or they're trying to just back further in. Maybe they'll try to usher you out. But either way, but that whole concept of feeling like if I go in the forest, I should be fearful, I've never felt that. I feel more afraid of getting cornered by a mountain lion or being between a mama bear and her cubs than anything else.
It's really hard to follow after all these guys spoke because they said everything I would say exactly. Being into the woods for over 35 years, hunting and fishing with my uncles and my dad and my granddad, I would have to say going into the woods is spooky sometimes if you go by yourself and you don't really know what's out there. There is something out there and we're trying to find out what it is. And be angry, mad, and we're scared or we're not scared, it's definitely going to be hard to go out there and research if you don't know what you're doing. So my advice is research the area before you go and tell somebody where you're going if you're going alone. I prefer not to go alone. I try to bring people with me when I go, and I will protect myself and people with me. So with that being said, be careful when you do go out into the woods. And David Polite writes a lot of books about it. And so be aware and always stay frosty.
Good job. Okay, so, we've heard about the aggressiveness or the non-aggressiveness of this creature. When we're dealing with what Alan and Ron are talking about here, I want to go from an approach here, and maybe you can elaborate a little more, but scientists now, we're dealing with science from a cryptozoological standpoint. We're dealing with Bigfoot being a hominid or an ape or something of that nature, a mountain ape. We're looking at dimensional creatures with regard to what Alan and Ron are discussing here. We're leaping into an area where science is just barely entering, and that is the idea of quantum mechanics. And when we're looking at quantum mechanics, we're looking at dimensional portals, time travel, we're looking at superposition, where something can be in the same place at the same time. We're looking at the eddies, which of course there are eddies, electromagnetic eddies all over the planet. There's one in particular called the North Atlantic Anomaly that is very interesting. But what it's doing is it's creating time warps over areas like the Gulf of Aden and places in Africa. So, there's, while I always say I like to separate my peas from my potatoes, I'm ready to learn about the quantum Bigfoot, actually, the quantum aspects of Bigfoot. So, I guess I turn it over to Ron and Alan to explain a little more. Ron has even said that he, on his property, put together a portal. So I'd like to hear about that as well. So let's start with Ron talking about the portal aspects, and I want Alan to talk more about this, quantum superposition Bigfoot. It'd be awesome. Here we go.
The portal is just a phenomena in the Earth's magnetic field that allows some sort of lifting of the veil. As human beings, we don't really see all of reality. And when you have a lifting of the veil, you might have a contact experience of some kind. In the past, maybe it was fairies or maybe something religious. But now some people are having Bigfoot experiences that raise their consciousness as well. And you have reports of many paraphysical aspects of Bigfoot that you don't have, for example, with a primate of any kind. The expedition Bigfoot, as far as I can see, mostly they've encountered unexplained paranormal phenomena rather than any Bigfoot, and they don't really seem to recognize it and say, well, this is something slightly different and this is real, and we should record it and try and explain it if we can. And if you come tomorrow, you'll see the process we went through, which was using a variety of paranormal techniques to maybe invite contact with something in a greater reality. And maybe most of you people who have these experiences in some way are inviting that. You want them. And so when they show up for you, it's not an accident. It was done for you specifically because they're obviously smarter than you, more intelligent than you, and in many ways much more capable of actions that go beyond anything a human could ever do. So that's my point of view, and I know it doesn't agree with these other people, but that's just the way it seems to me right now. So, elaborate on that, Alan?
So for me, I've always, started out with a BFRO and Flesh and Blood and looking at all these things, and there was always pieces of some of these reports that I work on that just didn't sort of fit. And a lot of my, cohorts in that would just sort of throw those pieces out, but I always sort of kept them in the back of my mind. And I thought to myself, I want Bigfoot to be this undiscovered primate. That's what it is in my head. But if, a UFO flew over one day while I'm in the woods and dropped off a Bigfoot, I would have to kind of just go with it. So that hasn't happened to me yet, but I definitely have had experiences that don't fit the mold. So I don't know if it's, we're encountering other things while we're out there besides Bigfoot, or if all these are connected in some way. But, Ron came up with some concepts and we talked about it, and we decided to sort of approach it as, is this connected, and can we sort of follow one thread to the other? I started out in this realm as a paranormal investigator, so the idea of putting it all together and bringing everything I have with me sounded like a good idea. I have all the stuff already, so let's see what happens. So we started using some of these, EMF detectors and measuring magnetism and all these different things with us, trying to correlate with what was happening and what we were witnessing with, try to bring a little science into it to see if we could, sort of get some more answers. So we have some details and a whole presentation on it tomorrow that I don't want to spoil, so we'll get into that. But the idea that this could be, interdimensional in some way, or it's coming in and out, in my mind, it's an easy excuse for why we don't have a body and all these other things. But at the same time, I, start to wonder. I've definitely encountered where I had what I believe was a Bigfoot encounter, very close, within maybe 20, 30 feet. And I didn't get quite a visual on the creature, but we were able to use a thermal and see the bipedal footprints that were still warm. And there was maybe like 10, and then there were no more. So I don't know where it went, but it just ended in the middle of a trail, and I don't know how to explain those things. So I've had many experiences that don't line up with the traditional Bigfoot, and I'm just, following what happens and following the thumbs that I've been getting.
Why do you only get one or two footprints and not something running around for a half a mile or something?
So Bob, let me ask you about when you had your experience and you guys were filming, and did you feel as though that maybe this creature could have been from, some other dimension, or from, was it like a religious experience, or did you feel a spiritual experience with it?
Well, this is all brand new to me. Of course, it was new to anybody. But I just have that feeling that this being that I'm looking at is something real. And we've been looking for it for a long time and hoping that we could see one, and it all came true. So I was a very lucky individual to be there at the time that this all happened. And so I just counted my blessings and let it go with that, and figured it is what it is, and it is what it appears to be, and nothing else. Nothing else.
Well, that's the panel to this other side, and we can start again with Ken. What Ron and Alan are doing are basically opening the discussion again for the dimensional Bigfoot, the ultra-terrestrial Bigfoot. I can give it all kinds of names. And what's interesting is that now that we're hearing from them, exactly what their task is, and what I know, and I'm one guy who loves to jump into quantum discussions, because I always just say, everything that happens that's bizarre, you can always chalk up to quantum physics. I think it's when you start you talk about things like panpsychism or all these other things that have been like, well, everything has a consciousness. That's all new agey crap. Well, now scientists are looking into panpsychism. They're looking into dimensional portals. They're looking into all this. So, are we willing now to open up the dialogue again for this, or is this something that we want to avoid because they kind of push it into the tabloid Bigfoot when that happens?
So much to say. So first of all, I'd like to point out, and this sounds like a bit of a cliche, but Bigfoot, the concept of Bigfoot is such an incredibly polarizing subject for each of us as an individual and, as a culture. It touches us on a lot of levels, psychologically and philosophically and so forth. So we all obviously come into this with certain biases. Let's admit it, we're all very diverse and biased. Our biases are based on our life experiences and so on and so forth. I've certainly heard from a lot of people, Clyde, that claim that they've had these paranormal type of experiences out in the woods. And again, from my perspective as a cryptozoologist, I try to look at this scientifically, so it's based on evidence and data. And when you look at the wide body of evidence, the long view of data with regard to Bigfoot, which includes thousands of eyewitness accounts, the number of accounts that describe the really weird paranormal aspects are actually minuscule compared to the vast number of accounts that describe Bigfoot walking across a road, drinking water, looking out from behind a tree, which are all perfectly natural things. So I think a lot of people tend to fixate on these really weird accounts and experiences because they kind of, they intrigue us. But I think it's a cultural phenomenon in terms of how people conflate and combine the Bigfoot phenomenon with other things. Now, certainly I'm open-minded enough to acknowledge there probably are a lot of things in our world that we just don't understand that are going on around us all the time. And a lot of those things probably happen deep out in the woods. And maybe when people are out in the woods, they just tend to connect that to Bigfoot for some reason. But I'm certainly not a quantum physicist, nor do I pretend to know anything about those things. But I always have a few pushbacks and challenges. And one is, if these portals exist, why are they always deep in the wilderness? Why isn't there a portal in the Walmart parking lot? Or, in Manhattan? Why isn't somebody watching Bigfoot walking downtown Portland? So, again, it depends on your interpretation and your perspective. But based on my career and decades of research into the Bigfoot phenomenon, I do hear the weird stories, but I don't think that they stand up to the vast majority of accounts which basically describe perfectly natural behaviors that you'd expect from an undocumented hominid.
Do you want me to address the same thing?
Yes. This is a very, very, the way I see it, this is like, I think, opening up a new way of looking at things with an old way of discussing it. And that's the thing that's so, it's almost like it's a quantum conundrum in and of itself, because for the longest time, scientists and those who've been investigating Bigfoot have kind of shied away from the dimensional investigations. Now, with what we know about quantum entanglements, it's not now, I mean, it's a harder sell, but still it's not out of question. So, Cliff, what do you think?
I think Sasquatch is about as quantum as bears are, honestly. Yeah. Well, you can poo me if you want, but I'm an evidence-based researcher, and just like you have your own experiences. You have seen the evidence that either convinces you of something or not, and I have that as well. And it's okay that I agree with you, because a sign of intellectual and emotional maturity is being able to hear contrary points of view and not taking that as offense. So I'd like to challenge you in that sort of way. I have never seen anything that would convince me Sasquatches are anything else but a perfectly normal species of something. A human-like, I think they're hominins. I think that they're probably paranthropocines. I'm not sure what they are, of course, and I'm basing that on the evidence. Yeah, and there are outlying stories. There are stories of them doing all these phenomenal things. Well, I also think that the universe is not only weirder than you think, I think it's weirder than you can think, and weird stuff happens. I just don't attribute the weird stuff to Sasquatches. I'll even go as far as to say that there may be other things out there talking to us inside our brains somehow, and they're more than happy to tell you they're Bigfoots if that makes you relax enough to listen. You know what I mean? I am wide open to the weird. I just don't think Sasquatches are weird. Out of the tens of thousands of sightings, and I've personally spoken to several thousand people, I think that's conservative, several thousand people have told me their story, face to face. And I think that if there's the weird stuff accounts for less than a dozen of those. And that's pretty strongly leaning and kind of pointing me towards the perfectly normal animal. I do think they're perfectly normal animals, just like we're perfectly normal animals. We are a little weird, and so are they. Every animal's a little weird in their sort of way. But if they are interdimensional, UFO, riding, shape-shifting whatevers, why are they eating roadkill? Why are they digging through trash cans? Why is it that their morphology exactly matches the other ape species that we're aware of, and also most human ancestors? The evidence points to them being a perfectly normal animal that evolved here on this planet. And I'm going to go with the evidence and my personal experiences, just like every single person in the audience and just like every single person on this stage. We're all biased, as I think Ken said. I think it was you. I'm not sure. I wasn't listening. I don't know. I'm just kidding. But you hear what I'm saying. I have my experience. You have yours. I'm going where the evidence takes me. And I would encourage you to do the same. By all means. I am wide open to being wrong, but by all means. If I am wrong, I am looking forward to being corrected. So far, I have not been corrected. And I'll leave it there.
So here's the perspective for you. So let's just say that we have 6 researchers up on stage. And 5 out of the 6 tell you, hey, we don't believe that there's any paranormal activity with Bigfoot. We don't believe this, we don't believe that. Now you're over there, and you're looking up on stage, and you're going to go tell somebody now your paranormal encounter with Bigfoot. Are you going to go to those 5 or 6 that said, no, we don't believe? No. You're going to go to the one who's going to give you a sympathetic ear and listen. That's a good reason why some of these people don't hear these stories, because they put it out there and they don't believe. Now I'm one of these people, I have an open mind. And I'll tell you a quick story. I did a 2-hour special for the History Channel called Vanished. Anybody see that? All right. Well, they sent me to Wisconsin, and I interviewed a theoretical physicist. And we sat down, we had a conversation about portals. And Ken made a logical statement, well, why don't portals open up in the middle of New York City? I asked him this question exactly. He said, Dave, do you know that there's a group of physicists from other countries that meet regularly, and they're trying to understand how portals are used offensively? Meaning, used by an intellectual something to target something. And they said, obviously they exist, and every theoretical physicist in his world said that they exist. So they have to understand how these countries or entities or something are using these to target and take something. And we had this conversation for like 4 or 5 hours. Prometheus aired maybe 10 minutes of this interview, but it was an eye-opening experience. And then since then, and since that special, other physicists have contacted me and said, hey, Brandenburg was 100% right. Everyone is looking at this from an offensive angle. Not if it's real or not, but how it could be used offensively as some type of weapon. So I think it's way past the if it exists. It's more likely it does exist, and it's being used to counter something else. That's the only thing I have to say about that. Thank you.
I have very little knowledge on the interdimensional or the portal piece of it. My theory and my belief is that something that has enough body weight to leave an impression in the soil weighs quite a bit of weight. Why would it need to be able to travel interdimensionally? If it could, why would it actually set foot on the soil? Number one. Number two, we get thermal readings from this thing, so it indicates that there's something beating in the chest of this thing and has flesh and blood heat. I can't say that everything that I see on the thermal is Bigfoot. I can't say whatever leaves an impression on the ground is Bigfoot. My theory, though, is I've come from the belief that Bigfoot would be flesh and blood. Just like a bear, just like a deer, just like an elk. Leaving a track, leaving a heat trace. If it could travel interdimensionally, would it go to a place where it knows it would not be seen, or healthier resources, food, water, whatever it needed? And just like Cliff, if I'm wrong, and it is interdimensional, if it does travel with a portal, show me, prove me wrong, I will accept that. I'm always willing to be corrected, like you said. But so far, I'm a researcher, and I'm researching my own side of things. And I take it from my own perspective first, because I'm dissecting one piece at a time. And I've seen some strange things. Thermal imaging, but I will tell you this, thermal imaging doesn't always stay in place. A heat trace can disappear quickly. And I've done some research on that. And I can't even get into that right now. But what it takes to keep heat in the air long enough to keep a thermal reading for any length of time, it takes a beating heart. It has to be there. If it travels interdimensionally and passes beyond my scope through those thermal imaging devices, great. Show me.
That's what I've done so far. I'm open-minded to the whole theory of interdimensional travel and quantum physics and everything. I am like Russell, I do need proof though, but I'm not a skeptic. And I really believe people are seeing some pretty interesting things, and everybody doubted Nikola Tesla and some of his inventions and whatnot. And if you're familiar with the Philadelphia experiment, my dad was in the Navy, and he told me some things. So I actually believe. So I'm just going to leave it right there. And I do need proof though. So moving on. Good job.
This discussion reminds me of a meeting I had once with Stephen Hawking. I actually met him. We were at a speaking engagement in Utah, actually. And he was in his wheelchair, and I had a chance to talk with him. And it's difficult to carry a conversation with a man who you ask him a question, it takes a few minutes or a few seconds to get the answer. But it was well worth the trouble, because he asked me what I did for a living, and I said, I'm a talk show host. And he says, well, what do you talk about? I talk about aliens and Bigfoot. Here I am talking with Stephen Hawking, thinking he's going to laugh at me and say, you're a moron. But no, he didn't. He actually said, it's wonderful that you think outside the box. And I said, well, thank you. I didn't expect you to give me that kind of an answer, because, I mean, Stephen Hawking, we know that he's an atheist, and he's, quantum physicist, and talks about black holes. And one of the things he said to me, which I thought was interesting, of all things, guess what Stephen Hawking and I talked about? Of all the things in the universe, we talked about the belief of Santa Claus. I'm not kidding you. He actually said to me, because I was feeling a little kind of embarrassed to say that I was, a talk show host, and he said to me, he says, don't be. He said, with quantum physics and Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, he dragged that out, Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, anything is possible. And he said to me, he said, are you going to go up to tell, a young person that, Santa is not there? And I said, well, no, because, the belief is beautiful. The belief is wonderful. And he goes, that's the point. He says, in the quantum universe, a little boy can walk up and shake hands with Mickey Mouse. And to him, it's the realest thing in the world, Mickey Mouse is. And I thought, okay, I understand the beauty of this, it's philosophical, and Stephen Hawking's being all philosophical with his electronic voice. But he says to me, now how do you think Santa would be able to deliver all those toys to girls and boys as fast as he could? Because the situation is, if you were standing at the North Pole, and Santa was to take off in his sleigh, you would never see him take off. And I go, why is that? He says, because he goes faster than the speed of light. Now how does he do that? So you'd happen so fast, you wouldn't even see him leave. He'd come back so quickly, you wouldn't see him leave. And then to do it all in one night, all these incidents going on. He says, it's kind of like, how you send out emails? And I said, yeah. He says, you can put thousands of people in an email list, and all you have to do is push the button one time, and at the same time, everybody gets the email. And it's done in a split second. He goes, that's how I explain how Santa Claus can basically deliver those toys all year long. He said, you ever wondered how people act differently at Christmas time? And I said, well, I guess. Some people get depressed. But he says, what about the people that are joyful? Why do you think that happens? Why do you think mom and dad are excited to see the grandkids? And why do you think blah, blah, blah? And he goes, it's because maybe that whole spirit of the season is tachyon particles. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, he says, you can reduce everything down to tachyon. It can enter in the body, leave the body. It can enter into this atmosphere, leave the atmosphere, and enter into any portal you wish. And it can manifest itself as anything you like, whether it be Santa Claus, Bigfoot, anything. And I was very surprised he was telling me this, because he was really screwing with my head. But he was being very serious. And he said, that's how we're going to figure out where the aliens are, he said. He said, we're going to realize that perhaps they're not extraterrestrial at all. He said, they may be synthetic intelligences that are ultra-terrestrials. I go, I've never heard that term before, ultra-terrestrial. He says, ultra-terrestrial means that they travel at the speed of thought, and they're conjured from the subconscious, and what we conjure as human beings could be tachyon. And using the uncertainty principle, you can say, well, anything's tangible, anything is possible. It says, these are the miracles you heard about in the Bible. These are miracles you hear about when people say, oh my gosh, he even got into, what he called psionics. He said, remember that story you always hear about the mom who's in the car, and the car ends up on top of her child, and she lifts the car up, and the child gets away free? No one ever asked the question as to how that mother lifted the car. We all say, it's adrenaline that did it. No. So if it was adrenaline, her arms would break. If you used to lift the car, she'd break her arms. How did she keep her arms intact? He said the power of the mind kept her intact. And psionics, the very thing they teach karate students to break bricks with their heads, is what motivates human beings. If they were just to focus for a while, listen to what their heart tells them, listen to what is being said, maybe we'd solve all of our problems. But we're too busy going here and going there and going everywhere. But we all boil down to nothing but carbon and tachyon, he said. And ever since then, I walked away with a whole new perspective on aliens and Bigfoot and ghosts and all that. And so, once again, I would say, and just like the panel over here, I like to separate my peas from my potatoes. But that doesn't mean I'm not willing to try mixing my peas with my potatoes. I'll do that, no problem. So that is why I want to then go back to Ron and Alan. And first of all, Alan, I want you to make a good argument here. We heard the one side. Let's hear some more from the other side. I think that put some balance into it.
Well done, Clyde. I like your story about Stephen Hawking.
I just thought it was appropriate. Yeah, let's talk about Santa Claus now, too.
Not Santa Claus, yeah. Let's not.
Yeah, it's all you're fine. We'll turn it up a little loud, but go ahead.
So, for me, one thing that stopped adding up was we have all this
footprint evidence. That was me. I was out casting footprints, and you know, Cliff and Dr. Meldon had this huge collection of all these footprints that sort of proved that something we don't know about is wandering around out there. But it never really got us any further. We've tried to do DNA studies, and most of those sort of come up empty-handed. So that's when my mind started to leave the window open that maybe something else was going on. The other thing too, just to kind of go off with Russell was saying, was when I mentioned earlier I saw these footprints sort of disappear. The footprints that I saw would have been the oldest, you know, as it walked away, they were fresher. And so when they disappeared, it wasn't that those had cooled off, but they would have been the hottest prints. So again, it goes back to just experiences that I've had, and sort of the, you hit a wall. And at some point I said, you know, I don't know, you know, all the answers to the questions. Where's the body? Where's the DNA? Where's you know, all this other stuff? So that I think is where my mind started to open. And again, I don't claim to know anything either, but I'm definitely open to the possibility. And as David alluded to, when I did that, I started to get those stories and that missing piece that I wasn't getting before. And it did make me realize that there's a lot of people having strange experiences, whether they're connected to Bigfoot or not, I have no idea. But a lot of times they do happen in the same night, in the same area, to the same people. So that's something that, you know, Ron and I are really sort of just looking into. That's the thread that I've been given on my journey, and that's where I'm choosing to follow it, because that's where I'm being called. And the more I go down this path, the more things happen to me. I've had experiences. A lot of them are more traditional, you know, rock throwings and things like that to me, but they happen in these areas where there's craft that have been spotted in the sky, you know, recently, and other weird things happen. So that's, you know, we've evolved in this. I started Flesh and Blood, and then I went more towards, well, maybe a Bigfoot is doing all this, or maybe there's different things happening, to sort of this paranormal hotspot idea. And Ron and I have been going across the country over the last 3 years now, sort of looking at these places where all of these things, ghosts, aliens, all the typical, stereotypical evidence that you get from those things is all happening to the same people at the same place. So that's sort of where we are.
Okay, and Ron, go ahead and wrap that up.
Slightly differently. Since I was a kid, I was obsessed with the origin of life, paleontology, and I followed it up with some major scientific discoveries. I had peer-reviewed papers, I have species named after me, and what I've come to realize is that people have no agreement what life really is. There's no real good definition that anybody accepts. And as a result, the search for extraterrestrial, non-human intelligent life is a bit of a mystery and changing radically right now in terms of perspective on it, with the revelation of the Navy footage and hypotheses that if you're living on a different time scale, there might have been other life that evolved on this planet that we're just not capable of perceiving. Our instrumentation and our sensory abilities don't allow us to see it. So there's another way of looking at what are these phenomena that we're encountering, running into periodically and experiencing. And the idea there is that they're living on this planet as well, and maybe they don't like what they're doing and they're trying to wake us up.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much. And I'm getting told that the time is up, and I'd like to thank our distinguished guests. Give them all a round of applause for being here. I want to remind you that they all have tables, so go visit their tables and buy their books, buy their t-shirts, because they all put in hard work to come out here and be with you. And we will leave it to Craig to tell us what's left to do and what's available to us. And thank you so much for being a part of this panel. It was very successful. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.
And thanks to Clyde Lewis, too, for helping us out.
Hi.